All right, everyone. So I'm going to be going over the second practice paper 1 that we did in class. For those of you that aren't able to go over it with the rest of us today. All right, so number 1 says a store manager wanted to get an idea of how much shoppers were spending. The manager conducted a survey asking shoppers how much they had spent. The data is shown in the following table. All right, so we have a table of data. All right, it says, explain why only an estimate of the mean amount spent by shoppers can be found using the data in the table. It says even when the value of S is known, because there is one unknown value in the table. All right, so this is 1A. All right, and the answer to that is because the customers are grouped in ranges. All right, so whenever we have groupings, we don't know exact values, so we don't know exactly how much each customer spent. So exact amounts are not known. All right. An estimate of the mean amount spent by the shoppers is 8.58 pounds. All right. Find the value of S. Okay. So in order to do this, so they tell us the estimate of the mean. All right. Now, when we have grouped data, in order to find a mean, all right, we have to use the mid-interval value. So the first interval is from 0 to 2, so we have to use 1. All right, and there were 5 shoppers that spent that amount. The next interval is from 2 to 5, so halfway in between those numbers are 3.5. All right, and there were 14 shoppers who spent that. All right, the next interval is from 5 to 10. So we have 7.5 is that mid-interval. All right, and there were 20 shoppers who spent that. All right, the next interval is 10 to 20. So the mid-interval there is 15. And there were S shoppers, an unknown value, who spent that much. And our final interval is from 20 to 50. All right, so that mid-interval is 35. And there were 3 shoppers who spent that much. All right, now, of course, to find an average, we have to take that and divide it by the total number of shoppers. So we add the number of shoppers up in that column there. So 5 plus 14 plus 20 plus 3, all right, is 42. And then we still have the extra S that we don't know about. And they tell us that the mean here is 8.58. You could, of course, solve that by hand, all right, but you could also just throw this into Solver and get that S is equal to 8. All right, and the last part of this question C, it was not practical to ask every shopper in store on a particular day. So the manager stood at the shop exit for an hour and asked some, but not all, of the shoppers how much they had spent. And C asks to identify the sampling technique used in the survey. All right, that is convenience sampling. All right, so that's number 1. Number 2. Rangers use aerial imagery to help locate big cats on the savannah. This week, the plane is not available, so they must use last week's image, which shows the last known locations of 5 male cats at points A, B, C, D, and E, as illustrated on the following coordinate axes. All right, the horizontal scale, 1 unit, represents 1 kilometer. Same thing with the vertical scale. All right, male cats stick to very rigid territories, keeping their distance from other males to avoid confrontation. Using the image above, rangers draw 3 straight lines to form an incomplete Voronoi diagram. All right, 2A says calculate the gradient of the line segment CD. All right, well, point C they give us is 5, 7, and D they give us is 9, 9. All right, so the slope of line segment CD is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So here we have 2 over 4, which is 1/2. All right, B, find the equation of the line which would complete the Voronoi diagram cell containing site C. Give your answer in the form ax plus by plus d is equal to 0, where a, b, and d are all in the set of integers. Okay, so we're going to need 2 things. We're going to need a point, and we're going to need slope. All right, now, remember all of the Voronoi diagram edges are made by perpendicular bisectors, right? So we're actually looking for the perpendicular bisector between points C and D. All right, so if the slope between point C and D is 1/2, then the perpendicular bisector to that has to be -2, the slope to the perpendicular bisector. All right, again, it has to be the bisector, so the midpoint of CD has to be on that line as well. Of course, the midpoint is the average of the x's, so 9 plus 5 over 2, comma, the average of the y's, so 9 plus 7 over 2. All right, so 14 over 2 is 7, and 16 over 2 is 8. All right, so the point 7, 8. All right, now you can either use slope-intercept form or point-slope form to begin. I'll just go point-slope form here, I guess. All right, so we have y minus y1, which would be 8, is equal to m, which is -2, times x minus x1, which would be 7. All right, and now we have to put this in the form that they were asking, ax plus by plus d is equal to 0. All right, so first I'll distribute. Y minus 8 is equal to -2x plus 14. All right, so I move everything over to the other side here. I'll have 2x plus y minus 22 is equal to 0. All right, so that matches the form that they ask. We are done. All right, C. In the context of the question, explain the significance of the Voronoi cell containing site C. All right, so any location inside cell C is closer to the male cat at point C than any other cat. Pretty straightforward Voronoi diagram information there, right? Anytime you're in a cell, you are closest to the site that that cell is named after. All right, number 3. In a version of the computer game Space Invaders, a player has a set time to complete each level. On level 1, a player has a time limit of 300 seconds to complete it. The time allowed for each level form an arithmetic sequence. On level 4, the time limit is 255 seconds. A. Work out the value of the common difference D. Okay, so we know that A sub n, all right, is equal to S sub 1 plus n minus 1 times D. And I think your formula book uses U sub n, but whatever. All right. So we know that S sub 1 is 300. All right. We know that the time on the 4th on level 4, so we know that A sub 4, all right, is equal to 255, which is equal to 300 times 4 minus 1. Whoops, should be a plus in there. Plus 4 minus 1 times D. All right, so now we just go ahead and solve here. So subtract 300 from both sides. We get negative 45. We can distribute here, right? So we get 3D. We don't really have to distribute, right? Just 3 times D, divide by 3. So negative 15 is equal to D. All right, so each level, they take 15 seconds off. All right, B. The final level has a time of 45 seconds. Find the number of levels in the game. All right, so we're trying to find N, all right, but we know that the final level has 45 seconds. So 45 is equal to S sub 1, which is 300, plus N minus 1 times D, which we know is negative 15. All right, so we distribute here, all right, this is going to be negative 15N plus 15, right? So this will be 315 minus 15N. So now solving for N, right, we're going to subtract 315 from both sides and get negative 270 is equal to negative 15N. Divide both sides by negative 15, and we get 18. So the number of levels is 15. So 18 levels. All right. C, find the maximum time allowed to complete the whole game. So that's where we use the series, right? The sum of all of the first 18 levels. So we're going to be doing S sub 18, all right? And that equals N over 2, which in this case is 18 over 2, times the times the quantity of the first term, which is 300, plus the last term, which is 45, and that equals 3,105 seconds. And that is it for number 3. For number 4. We have Sirona has been watching the birds that visit her backyard bird feeders and recording which of the food options they go to first when they arrive at the feeding station. The results of her observations are shown in the table below. And here you're given a two-way table. Sirona conducted a chi-squared test for independence at a 5% significance level. A, state the null hypothesis. All right, so the null hypothesis would be that food option does not depend on bird type or anything similar to that. All right, B, calculate the p-value for this test. So we just put that into a matrix.